Welcome to this explainer. So, when you hear the name Caligula, your brain probably goes straight to the extremes, right? But I want you to take a step back with me today and ask yourself a slightly deeper question. Unhinged madman? Or was he just the predictable, almost inevitable result of completely unchecked power? We're talking about a guy who actually ordered his heavily armed Roman soldiers to march down to the beach and attack the ocean with their swords, the god of the sea. We're talking about a leader who quite literally turned his grand imperial palace into a working casino. But the real mystery here, and what we're going to unpack today, is whether Caligula was actually an anomaly or a pioneer. To really understand this, we need to look at what I call the hollow principle. It's essentially the predictable, almost mathematical outcome of what happens when baseline human psychology violently collides with unchecked autocratic power. Okay, let's dive into this, starting with pattern number 1, the megalomania matrix. So, back in ancient Rome, Caligula notoriously suffered from existing inside this complete, impenetrable isolation echo chamber. Just think about the basic psychology here for a second. This extreme isolation eventually led him to declare himself a living deity. The Romans also relied heavily on this brutal policy called damnatio memoriae, which literally meant erasing political rivals from history by aggressively destroying their statues and scratching their names out of all public records. Well, today, we see the exact same psychological mechanisms at play globally. Instead of chiseling names off marble, modern state propaganda uses digital manipulation to airbrush purge cabinet members out of official photographs. Modern leaders build massive cults of personality, mandating their portraits hanging in classrooms or using state-run media to rewrite history. That's just the modern equivalent of eliminating rival senators. It is a cold, calculated structural requirement for maintaining total control over a population. And that brings us to our second historical pattern, weaponized absurdity. You have probably heard the legendary story of 𝓝𝓸𝓲𝓻. This was an animal that Caligula allegedly tried to elevate to the rank of a high political consul and a Roman senator. But historians actually argue he wasn't crazy at all. He was actively and intentionally humiliating the Senate. He was sending a very clear, chilling message. My literal farm animal could do your job better than you, and this brilliantly illustrates what we see in contemporary global politics. Today, autocratic and erratic populist leaders engage in this exact same type of performance art, make wildly contradictory statements on live television, or appoint spectacularly unqualified sycophants or even direct family members to incredibly critical cabinet positions. So the crucial point is why they do this. It essentially comes down to 3 deliberate steps. First, issue an absurd or demonstrably false decree. Second, force your staff and media to repeat it verbatim. Third, entirely crush the concept of objective truth. When a modern leader states something that is mathematically, provably false, like, say, blatantly lying about crowd sizes or fabricating economic data out of thin air, and then forces their staff to go on live television and fiercely defend that lie, they are actively breaking the public's psychological reliance on objective reality. If a leader can successfully make their inner circle publicly defend a total absurdity, they've completely dismantled the concept of objective truth. It is a raw, unadulterated loyalty test. It's the absolute modern equivalent of marching a horse into the Senate chamber. It's designed specifically to exhaust the public and control exactly what is accepted as reality. All right, now let's look at the money with pattern number 3, the architecture of kleptocracy. Kleptocracy is essentially just a fancy political science term for a government run entirely by thieves. Caligula somehow managed to completely empty the massive Roman treasury in less than 2 years. Well, he did it through massive, wildly lavish infrastructure projects that served absolutely no public purpose. He built the legendary Nemi ships, which were basically colossal floating palaces on a lake. They featured imported marble baths, sprawling fruit orchards, and incredibly, fully functioning running hot water. And, of course, he literally used to roll around in massive piles of gold coins just for the physical sensation of it. Now, flash forward to today. Look globally at developing nations where half the population might be struggling to survive below the poverty line. Meanwhile, the leaders of those exact nations are building multi-billion-dollar private palaces, hoarding stolen national wealth in complex offshore tax havens, and installing literal gold-plated plumbing in their mega yachts. The human appetite for excessive optics and hoarding wealth at the expense of the public, it hasn't evolved a single bit in 2 millennia. Which brings us to a critical junction for understanding unchecked power, the historical warning. So, how did this all end for Caligula? Well, his reign didn't conclude because the Roman political system naturally realized its mistake, self-corrected, or peacefully voted him out of office. No, it ended because his own elite bodyguard, the Praetorian Guard, eventually decided he was simply too erratic and too incredibly dangerous to be left alive. The ultimate tragedy of absolute power is that it inherently creates a countdown timer. And this is precisely why studying ancient Rome isn't just some dusty, purely academic exercise for history buffs. It's a vital, living diagnostic tool for analyzing modern global politics. It vividly exposes the fatal structural vulnerabilities of unchecked power. Because when a leader begins to aggressively demand absolute loyalty over actual competence, when they weaponize pure absurdity to systematically destroy the concept of truth, and when their own personal luxury wildly outpaces the basic public good, they aren't inventing a new style of leadership. They are just reading from a 2,000-year-old script. And if the violent, chaotic history of the Roman Empire has taught us absolutely anything, it's that those specific scripts always end the exact same way. So I want to leave you with a final provocative thought today. Which modern leader is channeling Rome? I invite you to take this historical framework, this hollow principle, and independently apply it to the global political stage today. Look closely at the behavioral patterns, observe the architecture of the propaganda, and draw your own conclusions. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the patterns around you.